Hello, everybody, and welcome to Classic Country Backstories. I'm Colleen Gallagher. Today, we'll be beginning a vlog on a legend's legend. He's one of those guys that you would know by his first name, just like the legends of Hank and Merle. His name was Lefty. Lefty Frizzell, that is. He was a hero to most of our heroes in country music today. This is going to be a two-part vlog, but make sure you hang on for both parts because it's well worth the watch. We were very fortunate to get to spend some time with David Frizzell, who is Lefty's younger brother, and he gave us lots of good stories about his brother Lefty and his life and his career. So stay tuned and watch with us on Classic Country Backstories, the story of Lefty Frizzell.
Nashville, Tennessee, country music capital of the world, home of the Grand Ole Opry, where singers and dreamers come seeking stardom. Join me as we learn about the lives and careers of those who built this town on Classic Country Backstories. Born William Orville Frizzell, March 31st, 1928, in Corsicana, Texas. He was the firstborn of 9 children to Naaman Frizzell, an oil field worker, and A.D. Cox Frizzell. The family moved to El Dorado in southern Arkansas during his early years. Lefty's family moved often following his father's work in the oil fields. Lefty began singing professionally before he was a teenager. He earned a spot on a local El Dorado station, KELD Radio. He spent his teenage years playing nightclubs and radio talent shows, performing throughout Arkansas, Texas, and New Mexico. During this time, he developed his note-bending vocal style, influenced by his heroes Jimmie Rodgers and Ernest Tubb. In 1941, Naaman Red Frizzell, Lefty's father, enlisted in the Army as World War II was raging. Red moved his family to Greenville, Texas, where he entered boot camp. The family stayed behind and Red was sent to Europe. While he was deployed, Lefty found a job delivering prescriptions and Western Union messages for a local drugstore. You have to realize Lefty was only 12 or 13 years old. He would give what little he earned to help put some groceries on the table. At first, he would deliver on foot until his aunt bought him a bicycle. While living in Greenville, Texas, Lefty began playing parties and dances. Lefty's mother took him to Treadway Market, which was a little farmer's market of sorts. It was a gathering place for all ages. Lefty dressed in his best cowboy clothes, brought his guitar, and began singing at the market. His mother, A.D., would dance and pass the hat. People stopped what they were doing and they paid attention. Then Lefty began performing on KPLT radio out of Paris, Texas. Around this time, he met the beautiful dark-haired Alice Harper in the Servicemen's Free Hotel. Their relationship flourished throughout the spring of 1944. They were married in March of 1945. Lefty and Alice were both 17 at the time of their wedding. Their marriage was one of extremes. They loved each other fiercely, but there were many ups and downs, arguing, making up, then knockdown, drag-out fights, and then making up again. Their relationship lasted 31 years. They had 3 children, Lois, called Alita, Roger, and Marlon. Shortly after Red was discharged from the Army and came home, Lefty and Alice moved for a short time to Dallas, and the rest of his family prepared to move to New Mexico to work the cotton fields. In Dallas, Lefty found work in a band in a rundown bar called the Old Top Rail, and Alice, who was pregnant with their first child, found a job as a waitress. On Lefty's 3rd weekend with the band, the club owner told him that the band said he was an okay singer, but didn't like the simple songs he was singing. They wanted to play more Bob Wills type songs, so the club owner let Lefty go. The band said Lefty would never be a musician. 5 years later, the same guy the club owner let go was the #1 country singer in the world. Lefty and Alice met up with his family in Greenville, Texas, and moved to Roswell, New Mexico. It didn't take Lefty and Alice long to figure out that the cotton fields were not for them. They caught a ride with A.D.'s younger brother, Doc, to Waco, Texas. Lefty took a job with an American Rescue Workers Association. The workers would walk the streets with a tambourine soliciting money for the association. He traveled to cities in West Texas to make money, but it was scarce. While he was working, little Alida Frizzell was born on February 16, 1946. Eventually, Lefty, Alice, and Alida moved back to Roswell, New Mexico. Alice found a job and Lefty landed a 15-minute radio show on KGFL radio. Lefty got his own sponsors and his show was expanded to 30 minutes. He then went to work at a local dance hall called the Cactus Gardens on weekends and became the lead singer for the New Mexico Playboys during the week, along with his radio show. He soon became a local and regional star. Trouble ensued for Lefty Frizzell. In July 1949, he was arrested and charged with improper relations with an underage girl. After a dance at the Cactus Gardens, Lefty and 3 of the boys in the band took a girl and her friend down to the Pecos River, about 12 miles from town. Someone brought beer and they had a party. Lefty stayed with the girl who had a crush on him, and the other girl went with the other 3 boys. After the girls left the party, they were walking back to town and they were picked up by a policeman. The girls ended up telling the police and their parents that they had been out with these boys before. On July 14, 1947, the boys were arrested. Lefty pleaded guilty and went to jail to begin his sentence along with the other boys. Lefty was 21 and the girl was allegedly 14. Lefty was convicted of this a month later. He served 6 months in the county jail. In later years, the Frizzell family learned that another boy was accused with the same crime, with the same girl, pleaded guilty, and he was released on bail, never to serve time. After he made bail, there were no records of the boy. What happened? We'll probably never know. While incarcerated, Lefty wrote poems to his wife Alice from his cell filled with guilt. One of these songs went on to become his first big hit, which we'll talk about later. After release from jail in 1949, Lefty returned to the oil fields with his father. It wasn't long before once again he began singing in nightclubs. In 1950, Lefty landed a regular job at a club in Big Springs, Texas, called the Ace of Clubs. Here, he began to gather a regular following. Jim Beck, owner of a Dallas recording studio, found Lefty at the Ace of Clubs. Beck worked with several major record labels. Jim was impressed by Frizzell and invited him to record a free demo in his studio. In April 1950, Lefty recorded several demos. His original songs included If You've Got the Money, I've Got the Time. Beck took Lefty's demos to Nashville where he pitched them to little Jimmy Dickens. Dickens disliked the song. Then he moved on to Don Law, producer for Columbia Records. Don Law loved the song. Law signed Lefty, and he began recording for Columbia Records. Lefty signed an agreement giving Jim Beck half writing credit on all of his songs. This is something that he would live to regret later on. If You've Got the Money and I Love You 1,000 Ways was a 2-sided smash hit for Lefty Frizzell in 1950. The B-side was written for Alice while he was in jail in 1949. Within 2 years, these songs set him on a path to stardom. Lefty went on to have 13 top 10 songs. In January 1951, Frizzell signed a management contract with Jack Starnes Jr., a contract conflicted with another contract that Lefty had signed. Starnes filed a major lawsuit against Lefty, which was settled out of court a year later. Frizzell gave Jack the publishing rights to If You've Got the Money, I've Got the Time. This was also something that Lefty would later regret. In early 1951, Frizzell formed the Western Cherokees, led by Blackie Crawford. During this period, he spent extensive time in the studio recording singles. Lefty's third single, I Want to Be With You Always, was number 1 for 11 weeks in 1951. He was so popular at the time, his popularity could be compared to Hank Williams. Lefty had 3 more top 10s during 1951. Those were Mom and Dad's Waltz, Travelin' Blues, and Give Me More, More, More of Your Kisses in August of 1951. By 1952, Lefty was really in demand. He performed several times on the Grand Ole Opry and the Louisiana Hayride, and had more hits in 1952. How Long Will It Take?, Don't Stay Away, and I'm an Old, Old Man. Despite his massive success, Lefty's life and career began to decline. He fired his manager and his band. He joined the Opry, then quit shortly thereafter. He had earned a lot of money, but spent it quickly. While he was an incredibly talented singer, the business end of things was not his forte, apparently. He began recording with Wayne Rainey, an entertainer from Arkansas, but the sessions had little success. Lefty and Alice moved to Los Angeles in early 1953. Frizzell became a regular on the Town Hall Party television show on KTTV. Songs continued to chart, but none reached the top 10 that year. In 1954, Lefty reached top 10 on the country music charts for the last time for 5 years. Lefty felt burnt out and frustrated with Columbia Records. He felt they were not releasing his best material. He stopped writing songs and recording. However, he continued to tour extensively. During 1959, Lefty worked at Nashville's Cedarwood Publishing Company with Jim Denny. His first top 10 came with Long Black Veil that year. Lefty moved to Nashville in 1960 after the Town Hall Party closed. He began touring and recording more, scoring some minor hits. During the 1960s, Lefty recorded several songs, but Columbia Records did not release many of them. Due to declining record sales, his touring slowed. Lefty and Alice built a house on Sterling Road in Hendersonville, Tennessee in 1962. The house had 4 bedrooms and 3 baths. Lefty loved fishing on the lake that was literally in his backyard. In 1964, Lefty released his last big hit, Saginaw, Michigan, written by Don Wayne and Bill Anderson. The song went on to earn a Grammy nomination. Through all of Lefty's trials, Alice remained by his side. Lefty's life began spiraling due to his problems with alcohol. In early 1972, Frizzell left Columbia Records and signed with ABC Records. He was inducted into the Nashville Songwriters Hall of Fame. His song, If You've Got the Money, I've Got the Time, earned him a Grammy Hall of Fame award. Lefty Frizzell and Whitey Schaefer wrote a song called That's the Way Love Goes. It was recorded and released by Johnny Rodriguez in December of 1973. It went to number 1 and remained on the Billboard charts for 14 weeks. Connie Smith went on to record the song and released it as a title of her album in 1974. Lefty recorded the song himself, which is still sometimes played on classic country radio stations. Merle Haggard released That's the Way Love Goes in November of 1983 and took the song to number 1 once more as Merle's 30th number 1. It remained on the Billboard chart for 21 weeks, earning Haggard Best Country Vocal Performance Male at the Grammys. That's the Way Love Goes was also recorded by Crystal Gayle in 2019, Ronnie Dunn in 2020, and Alan Jackson in 2021. By 1972, Lefty's drinking had taken a toll on his health. He developed chronic hypertension, his appearance had changed drastically, and his voice had deteriorated. On July 19, 1975, Lefty suffered a massive stroke and later died at the Nashville Memorial Hospital in Nashville, Tennessee. He was only 47 years old. Lefty was buried at the Forest Lawn Memorial Gardens in Goodlettsville, Tennessee, in a section named Music Row. His wife Alice passed in 1984 and was laid to rest with Lefty. Lefty's guitar, a 1949 Gibson model SJ200, was on display for several years at the Country Music Hall of Fame. During a 2003 interview with Merle Haggard, he recalled, "When I was a teenager, Lefty got me on stage at the Rainbow Gardens in Bakersfield, California, and handed me that guitar. That is the first guitar I played on a professional stage." In January of 2005, the guitar was returned to the Frizzell family, and it was later sold at auction for $350,000. Merle purchased the guitar, and it remains in the Haggard estate. Lefty was a major influence on many great country singers and entertainers that preceded him, such as Merle Haggard, Willie Nelson, George Jones, Keith Whitley, and so many others. Roy Orbison said that Frizzell was a legendary singer and a prolific songwriter. Many songs have been written about him, and many albums have been recorded in tribute. In 1982, Lefty Frizzell was inducted to the Country Music Hall of Fame. He was ranked 31 on CMT's 40 Greatest Men of Country Music. Since Lefty's passing in 1975, brothers David and Alan Frizzell have continued to keep Lefty's music alive through both recording and live performances. Lefty had 6 number one hits. In addition to the 6 number ones, Lefty also had 11 other songs that made it to the top 10 on the charts. Today, I'll be talking with someone who has had a major career in country music, with several top 10 hits to his credit, both as a solo artist and with duet partner Shelley West. Please welcome to Classic Country Backstories, David Frizzell. Hello, David. How are you today?
I just doing fine. It's good to see you.
Well, it is
Good to talk
great.
to you.
It's great to have you on our program. We're so excited about that. We want to ask you some questions about Lefty. The main source that we used for Lefty's story is your book, I Love You a Thousand Ways, the Lefty Frizzell story. So this book was written from a totally different perspective than most people could write from, because he was more than a legend to you. He was your big brother. Can you tell us a little bit about how this book came to be?
Well, I'll tell you, I worked with him I started working with him at an early age, about 12, 13 years old. He'd come by and pick me up and take me on some of his shows, get me up there to sing a little bit, And what was kind of a little different thing that I don't think I've mentioned very often is that during that time, one or two or three times, about at least once a year, he'd take me into some recording studio and he'd record me singing something. And I never did really realize why he was doing that until later on. I found out that he was just checking my voice out. He'd check and see if it was coming along or if anything needed to be done or just whatever. But later on, when I was about 15 or so, I started working with him absolutely full time. And I did most of all the driving. I did them making sure all the shows went off well. Make sure he got there on time was the real trick. And but I did all the I do all the money stuff, and I get paid for him stuff, and then I'd handle all that money, and we'd take it back to Alice, Lefty's wife, when we get back home. So he never asked me for any of the money. If he ever did, it was maybe give me a 10 or maybe give me a 20, something like that. But by and large, I had all the money from all the dates, and took them back and gave it all to Alice, and then she'd go to the bank with it the next morning or whatever. And but I tell you what, I found out that he really trusted me, and that was somebody. Of course, obviously, I was too young to drink or smoke, and I didn't like doing any of those things anyway. But he trusted me, and he had a lot of faith in me, and he made sure that I had every opportunity in the world to work with him, get up there and sing and play and stuff with him, and then he gave me an opportunity to see all the other acts because he was working with everybody in those days. And I tell you one other thing about that is that during those times, during this touring seasons, which was about March through November, something like that, we'd be out there, maybe work a Friday and Saturday someplace, but almost every Sunday, there'd be a package show someplace. And he was invited to every one of them. And if he went, I went. And there would be people on those shows that Johnny Cash, Johnny Horton, Freddie Hart, Ray Price, everybody was on those shows. And there'd be 20 or 30 different people on every one of those shows. And Lefty was, basically pretty much on every one of them. And so was Johnny Cash. So I met Johnny Cash actually when I was about 15 years, about 1955, 56. I met Johnny Cash and was friends with him all the way, and still am. I just love Johnny Cash. So he gave me a chance. I'd get up there and I'd do 2 or 3 songs. Then I'd bring Lefty Frizzell on, and then he'd do his show. And sometimes I'd stay up there and play guitar. Sometimes I'd play harmonica, and sometimes I'd sing something with, a harmony or something. But after his show, as the show was going on, I was just standing behind the curtains watching everybody. I watched everybody's show, all the way through the whole thing. And so I got to know how Johnny did his show. I got to know how ever, that was the best school I could have ever went to. I would have never found any way to learn everything that I did without this opportunity that he gave to me. An incredible man.
That is amazing. So you've seen a lot of people through the years with him. So when you were writing the book, were you able to talk with family members to help fill in parts that happened before you were born or you were too young to remember?
Oh, absolutely. There was quite a few, especially one in particular. Her name was Betty. She was my older sister, and there was three boys, and then there was three girls, and Betty was the oldest of the other girls. She's a sweetheart. She's just amazing. But whenever I was writing the book and I come to a part, she was almost always there. She was there to help Alice and Lefty when maybe he'd be out working someplace. Maybe she'd be working someplace. She did a lot of work. And Betty would babysit for him, and so she was always doing something for somebody all the time. And she was an amazing, amazing lady. And but she was one of the main ones that helped me with anything that I didn't know about.
The book was dedicated to your mom, A.D. Frizzell. And from what I read, she seems like she was a pretty amazing lady. Can you tell us a little bit about her?
My goodness gracious. Uh, well, she reminded me of Sonny a lot. And I never did really call Sonny Lefty very much. I would do it when we was on the road, that type of thing. But basically, he was known as Sonny. And but Mama, back when Sonny was just old enough to walk, she was getting him out there. And there was one time living out of Greenville, Texas, which is northeast Texas, and Sulphur Springs, Texas, Mount Pleasant, and that area. And Greenville, Texas, or Sulphur Springs, Texas, either one of those. She during that. So that was before I was even born. I might have been just born,
Mhm.
and they go down to the town hall. They go down to the park right in the middle of town, and and he'd get up and sing for everybody, and she'd go around and collect money from everybody. See how to play a bowl. She'd go around and play. And then sometime he'd be singing and she'd jump up out of her whatever she was sitting in and do the Charleston. Just dance all over the place. She was a showman in her own right. She was an amazing lady, and she had the best personality. But she reminded me a whole lot of Lefty.
She sounds like she was a huge supporter of his music, especially early
No
on.
doubt, no doubt. And she
Wow.
was all the way through, and of mine, and of Alan, or any, all of us. She had a lot of kids. There was 9 of us, and so she was. Everybody thought, all of us kids thought we were her favorites. Every one of us individually thought, no, she's my favorite. I'm her favorite. I'm her favorite. But
That's
she
good.
just had a way with her, with the way she was, that I just absolutely hated for anybody that didn't get a chance to meet her. She's an amazing lady and very talented on her own. She was singing and played piano. And but she was from a family. There was a whole lot in her family too. There was quite a few in her family, 12 or 13 kids. And that in those days, people had 12, 14, 15, 18 kids, and uh, we were no different. Well, there was 9 of us, and but Mama was one of the most amazing people that I've ever been around in my lifetime with Mama, and Lefty was the other one. Lefty was absolutely. I feel sorry if anybody didn't get a chance to meet him. He was amazing. He loved playing tricks on you. He'd know. I'd go in. I'd come in the house or something, and he'd hand me a little book. Say, "Oh, hey, look this up, David." I'd open it up, be a battery, and shock the heck out of me. I'd throw that book in there. He just laughed. He just laughed. Yeah,
Oh
and
my
he
gosh.
did he did that kind of thing to just kind of everybody. I remember him one time he went up behind Sister Betty. She was washing dishes, and he patted her on the back, and he just kind of hugged her up a little bit, and then he walked her. Pretty soon she's itching. He put itch powder down her back.
Oh no.
he, he was an amazing person. He just loved to laugh and carry on, and just loved to see you do something, and that he could laugh about. And he did that pretty much all the time.
He sounds like he was quite a character.
Absolute character is the word. And I remember one time we were just kids. I must have been 5 or 6 years old. And he'd come to the house and he'd gather us all those kids around. He'd gather us all around and he'd tell us stories. And pretty soon he'd start making up a movie. He'd make it up and he'd give you a part, Wow. And I remember one time I was about 4 or 5 years old. And we're sitting there, and he said, "Look at Sister Betty over there. She's so pretty with that dark, beautiful hair. Like she's going to be an actor. She's an actress. She could be an actress, a film star." And she thought she really was. And she really thought, "This is my turn. I'm going to become an actor." And then he looked over at David. He said, "Look at little David over there. Look at those muscles on those arms. Look at the muscles." And boy, he talking enough for it. I just reached over and slugged my sister May.
Oh,
and
no.
the fight would be on. And he laughed all the way through it.
Oh my. In your book, you said your father, Naaman, who was usually called Red,
Yeah.
was a hard-working and hard-living man who started working in the oil fields at 13.
Yeah.
So, could you tell us a little bit about him?
Well, yeah, I actually wrote a song about him some time back, and me and my brother Alan recorded it. It's called "Fill His Shoes." Said I could wear his hat and coat, but I could never fill his shoes. But it's a song that I wrote for him some time back. It explains kind of that. It says, he was kind of a small man. I said he was kind of a small man in some people's view. He stood 5, 6, or 7 without his boots,
Mm-hmm.
and but he was an amazing person too. And but he worked. He'd get out in those up by 4 every morning, be out in the oil field wherever. But he'd pull and chain. He'd run the big machine, and they would let the chain in and out and put pipes down in the ground, all that kind of stuff. But he was the one that ran the big machine, and he would call it cat head man, and that's what everybody called him out in the oil fields, except for Red. Everybody called him Red. But he was quite a guy too. But he did work hard. He always worked hard, and I think there was a time when he came back from the army. He was in the army went in about 1941. That's when I was born. He went in 1941, and he was stationed somewhere in Greenville, Texas, and there by Sulphur Springs, Texas. And he was stationed there, and he moved the whole family over there. But he was there for about a year before they shipped him out to Europe someplace, Germany or someplace, in 1942. And so from then I didn't see him again until 1945. So because I was just a baby anyway, and I didn't even know who he was. And those were the days when Lefty had to quit school and go out and start working, making some money. Because otherwise, Mama would take him washings, Mama would, do ironing and stuff for people. And everybody did everything they could do to get by. And we did.
Well, now he was the oldest, was he not, of 9?
He was the oldest. He was the oldest
Yeah.
of 9. I
Yeah,
was
and
next to the youngest of it. Alan was his youngest in the family.
And Lefty would have been around 12, 13 years old when your dad went to World War II. So,
Yeah.
I mean, he was young and trying to work hard to help the family.
Yeah, he should. Yeah. And he'd get out. He'd paper routes and that sort of stuff. They worked at a drugstore a time or two, delivering prescriptions. Yeah, he finally got himself a bicycle somewhere or other, and he would deliver prescriptions and stuff to houses, whatever. And so he did anything he could think of to make any money. And he actually, I think he went to about the 6th grade. I don't think he ever got too much further than that. And so he didn't get any education, but he got that street smarts. You know what I mean?
Sure. So, what was he like as a brother? Growing up, what are some of your first memories of him?
Well, that's some of them where he'd come in and get everybody together, and he'd like to get everybody together, and then he'd get everybody either fist fighting or laughing or talking or making up stories, or he'd make up a story, get you involved, give you a part in it, you know. And he was so much fun. Anywhere you ever went with him, he'd take the kids out. And I remember a lot of times when I was growing up, he'd take us all to a little miniature golf thing. We'd all be trying to play miniature golf out there. Or when I got bigger out, he'd take me to the big golf course. And I still laughed away the way he swing to hit that ball. One of these days I see you, I'll imitate him for you. I'll show you how you swing to hit that ball.
Oh,
And it's quite comical.
I would love to see that.
But yeah, he'd do stuff like that, and he was always making up things. He's always going to a bookstore or something and finding books for us kids, from you know, and especially those trick stores where you go buy something make a trick out of, you know. And but he's always thinking of us, and he come by, especially in 1950s when he had his first #1 record. But before that, he was working for 1947, 1945, 1946. And I was just a real young kid. He was still working the club. He was going in working clubs and writing songs but in 1950, he had his first 2 #1 songs. If You Got the Money, I Got the Time was the first one, and the second one was I Love You a Thousand Ways. And they were on just the same record, A and B side. They had actual records, you know, and there'd be an A and B side to it. And so they had the A side was a hit, and the B side was a hit also. And then, like I think you mentioned something about in 1951, him and Hank Williams toured together all the time. They toured around a lot together, with good friends and just pals. They flipped to see who's going to go on first, you know. And flip a coin and see who's going to go first. And but they each had 4 songs. They had 7 songs in the top 10 Billboard charts at the same time. They had
crazy.
The 7 of the top 10 of Billboard charts. 7. Lefty had 4. Hank had 3. Lefty had #1, #2, #4, #6.
That
at
is
the same time.
That is crazy. That's unheard of.
Yeah. Always Late. It was a big #1 hit. Great big hit. But anyway, he had 4 at the same time. That's pretty amazing. And so
songs.
he did real well. And then of course he was touring all the time, big time in those days, and going all over the country, sometimes all over the world, you know. And then when I turned 15, in about 1955, I started working with him all the time. I was with him for about 4 years without ever leaving his side. And I remember all those times, and all the places we worked. Texas. There was almost a place. There was almost on a block, any block in Texas, there was 2 or 3 nightclubs.
Wow.
And he worked them all. And I don't know how he got me in and out of them, but he got me in and out of them. And and I'd go on and sing 3 or 4 songs, and I'd bring him on. Sometimes, a lot of times I'd stay up there with him, and then sometimes I wouldn't, but a lot of times I would. And I'd play a little harp with him, or play a little, strum a little guitar. Sometimes we never got a chance to. In those days, he had quit taking a band and started using where the house bands or whatever bands was made available for him. And so a lot of times I'd stay on there, and I could turn around and show the people of the band what key we're in, what chords we're going to, just show them as we're playing. And I kept him from having to do it himself. So that way he could entertain and face the audience and entertain the people, while I was showing the band how to play the songs.
Well, I'm sure he was so grateful to have you to help do that, because I know it's hard when you're out there beating the road. You have pickup bands that may or may not know your songs really well.
They may have known the big hits, but then a lot of times you want to sing them a song that maybe it's just been out released, or maybe it's just on they wouldn't even make an albums in those days. They'd go in about once or twice a year, and you do sessions. Normally were at least 4 songs per. Most of the time, 4. That didn't always work out like that, but you'd always take at least 4 songs in the session with you. Sometimes you'd only get 2 or 3 of them, but everybody would take at least 4 songs. So you only did that once or twice a year. And pretty soon they started talking about putting albums out, but that wasn't in those days, not in those real early days like that.
So they were just releasing the singles and not doing albums at that point.
Right. And later on they started putting 2 or 3 songs on one side and 2 or 3 songs on. Well, that's almost like an album, that's how they came up with doing an album, is that the little 45s, remember the little 45s?
Yes.
Sometimes those would have 2 or 3 songs on each side. But in the early days, there was 1 on each side, A and B side.
And he started writing songs pretty early on, did he not?
He did. As a young person, he even wrote songs that he may have recorded at some other time that wasn't that he had written at a real early age, and. He had so many. He's just a great. He told me a lot of times, David, this is how you write a song. And I said, make sure that it's something that anybody can just pick up and play, all across the nation, all across the country. That they don't make it so difficult that they can't just hear it and go play it. He said, to make it simple, make it easy. 3 chords.
Well, his songs were very visual. You could see the stories play out and in the songs. So
especially when you heard him sing them, he was always able to. The song explained itself. I guarantee you. I was with him in early 1959, where we were on our way to Nashville to do a session. And we had to stop 2 or 3 places to do some shows on the way back. But we all lived out in California, out of San Fernando Valley, and beautiful out there. They've changed it a little bit out there now, but in those days, a beautiful place. And so we took off, and we had 2 or 3 dates to do on the way back, and one of them is in Northeast Texas was one, and then we got over into New Mexico. There was a place there called Hobbs, New Mexico, and there was a club there that we was supposed to play called the El Maurice Club. That's the name of it. I still remember after all these years. And I was just I don't know how old I was, 16, 17 years old. Well, it was 1959. Anyway, early 1959. And we were there, and we pulled up to the place, and didn't know anything about the place, but we found the place, pulled up to it, and the owner came out and said, Lefty, thank you so much for being. Boy, everybody's been looking so much to you being here and everything. And Lefty said, yeah, well, I'm really glad to be here. This is my brother. This is my brother David, and he'll be taking care of everything for us. And but he's with us. And the guy said, David Frizzell, David, it's so nice to meet you and stuff like that. Finally, they told Lefty that there was 3 strippers on the show. He didn't know that this was a strip joint. And Lefty said, he said, I don't follow strippers. He said, but David does. And I said, I'll do it. No, come on, I'll do it.
Watch for part 2 of my interview with David Frizzell on Classic Country Backstories. And don't forget, like, subscribe, and hit the bell notifications for further episodes. Until next time, God bless, take care, and I'll see you later.